Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. So today we're going to be learning how to create a custom plugin in Go for Kong Gateway. If you enjoy this kind of content, please consider subscribing, and let's get right into it. So before we get started, let's have a quick look at what we're building. So I have my Kong instance running in Docker here, and I have one service, and this basically just routes /gists to the GitHub API. Then my custom plugin is called Go Wait, and all this does is it basically restricts you to wait a minimum number of seconds per request. So I can only make one request every 5 seconds. If I try to do more than one request, it's going to stop me and it's going to block me doing that. So if I head over to my Kong request HTTP here, I'm just going to hit run localhost. So the first one returns a 200. That's all working fine. But if I run a couple of them and one within 5 seconds, it's just basically going to stop me. So there's a 400 bad request. I've got a body here. And if I run it again, there we go. So this is what we're building. Let's get into it. So if you're not too familiar with what Kong Gateway is and how it works, I'd recommend checking out my initial tutorial. I'll leave a link in the description below and on the cards on the video. But today we're going to be looking at custom plugins. So there are a few different ways to create custom plugins. The initial way using a scripting language called Lua. We're not going to go into that. I'll leave links in the description below if you want to read a bit more about that. But today we're going to be using Go. So Go is relatively newly supported by Kong. And again, even within Go, there's a couple of different ways to set up a plugin. So what we're going to do is this embedded server way. I think this is the one that's kind of the easiest and most simple to get started. So that's what I'm going for here. So what we'll do first is we'll just quickly walk through the high level steps of how this is all going to work, how we're going to build the plugin, and then we'll dive right into the code. So in this documentation, it shows you kind of step by step. So this step here is actually, we'll probably do this last, which is basically configuring the plugin itself for Kong. So basically telling Kong how to execute the executable and where to find it, etc. So you're just configuring Kong with the plugin that we've built. But what we'll start off with is developing the plugin itself. And it's got kind of a few nice steps here which you can follow along. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to create a struct, which is basically your config, just to allow the different configurations coming in for your plugin. And then you need to give it a constructor so it can be instantiated. And then what we do is we basically implement a method. And this method, the name of this method is basically a different phase within the lifecycle of Kong, right? And the most common one that we can use is this access one. So we're just going to override this access method. And what we get as a parameter is the plugin development kit that Kong maintains. So this is basically a bunch of helper methods that allow you to adjust the behavior of this call. So the idea here is that this method doesn't return anything. So if you kind of let it go through, if you don't, break the chain anywhere, it's just going to proxy through and it's going to, finish off routing your request or doing whatever behavior it is outside there. What you want to do, of course, is, do your checks, do your logic, and then you can basically halt the execution here. So you can use this PDK to just return specific responses at certain times and, reject requests, etc. So that's basically where most of the magic happens. And then because we're using an embedded server, we're just going to pass a main function with this start server, and that's how it basically starts. So yeah, I think that's the high level overview. So let's get right into the code. So in terms of the code, the structure here is essentially exactly the same as the tutorial that I'd previously done. We have a Docker compose file, which basically is starting Kong, and we're passing in a Kong YAML file. So this is the configuration. Within the Kong YAML, all we're doing is we're setting up a service, which is going to point to the GitHub API. And this is going to be accessible at /gists, and that's it for now. So what we're actually going to do here is we're going to add our plugin. So we'll do that here just so we see what it looks like, and then we'll go and actually develop our plugin. So in terms of plugins, if you remember in the initial tutorial, I had a kind of a plugins block by itself, which referenced the service, but you can also just add the plugins directly to the service itself. So I'm just going to add a plugins block here, and I'm just going to give it a name. So our plugin is going to be called Go Wait. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add a config, and the config just has a wait time, and we're just going to pass in the number 5, which is 5 seconds. Cool. So what we're going to do first is we're just going to open up the terminal here, and we're just going to do go mod init. So we're just initializing our Go kind of module system, and we're going to call it Go, I think we call it Go Wait, right? So I think that's fine. So that's just going to add our Go mod file, and then actually we're going to also add the PDK as a dependency. So I think it's Go get GitHub PDK, so that should just add it here, and that should be fine. And I'm just going to remove this manually. This is just basically saying, hey, it's not being used yet, but I know that we're going to use it, so I'm just going to remove that manually. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a new Go file, and we're going to call this Go Wait. It's just going to be an empty file. There we go. And let's just change this to main. So I want this to be the main package because it's going to be the executable itself. And now let's see what the code looks like. So what we're going to do is we're going to create our struct first. We're just going to call it config. And like I said, this is going to be the wait time. So this is basically how long we're going to wait before you can create another request. And this is going to be in seconds. Next up, we're going to create our constructor, which is just new. And it's just going to return an instance basically of our struct. We could add kind of defaults here, etc. I'm just going to leave it with its 0 defaults just now. And next thing we're going to do is we're going to make a map. So this map is basically going to hold our requests. So it's going to hold the host name as a string, and it's just going to hold basically the time of the last request, right? So that way, every time we make another request, we can just check if the host exists, and then just compare the time with now and make sure that it's greater than the wait time, right? So next thing, like we said earlier on, we're going to implement the access method, and this is just going to be added to the config struct here, and we of course have access to the PDK, which in this case we've just named Kong. So first thing here we're going to do is we're just going to set a header. We don't need to do this, but just to kind of show you that it's there, we can use Kong response, and this is basically manipulating anything within a response. So if I jump into this and I just look at the methods that you have here, this is anything that you want to kind of action in terms of this function is all going to be here. So you can see that we can set the headers, or we can do the exit here, or we can clear headers, etc. The exit is basically what we're saying, actually, stop, don't continue to proxy this request. So I'm just going to go back a second. So in this case, we're just setting the header x wait time, and we're just passing in the wait time, and just logging that as, in this case, it'll be 5 seconds. Cool. So if we continue on, we're going to get a reference to the host, just using the request. So again, the PDK has a request object, and that request has everything you need from the request itself. Again, we jump into that, we can see the hosts, the ports, the method, the query, etc. Anything that you need from the request. And then of course you can see everything else here in the struct. Cool. So we go back. So this returns the host as a string as well as an error. In this case, I'm just going to be ignoring the errors, but of course, in a real application, don't do this. Handle your errors properly. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to try access the last request for this host. So using that host, we're going to access our request map, and we're going to pass in the hosts there, and that of course returns the request, which I call last request. And the second parameter here is basically it returns a boolean to see if it exists. So what we then want to do is we want to check, all right, if this entry exists, i.e. if we've seen this host before, and we basically checking the time, if now minus last request, check the difference of the time. If that's less than basically 5 seconds, so I'm just converting the wait time into a duration multiplied by seconds, so this is just 5 seconds, then what we're going to do is we're going to exit, right? And we're going to use that Kong response exit, and here I'm going to pass in, you can see the status, I'm going to pass in the body, which is just in this case a bit of string. And I'm just, I'm passing in an empty map. So this actually takes in additional headers, but we don't need any additional headers here. We could do if we wanted to. So that's basically if the request exists and it's within the time. Otherwise, we want to set a key with the host and, of course, use the current time. And that's it. So that should be enough logic to basically stop all incoming requests more than 5 seconds at a time. So final thing we need to do is we need to add our main function, and we just use, again, server.startServer, and we're going to ignore any errors here. And this asks you to pass in the version and the priority. And in this case, I've just chucked in a random priority and version number there. And this is pretty much it. This is all the logic we need. I think that should be good to go. So what we're going to do next is we're basically going to head over to the Docker Compose YAML file, and we're basically going to tell Kong about our plugin. So we're going to tell it where to find the executable, and we're going to tell it how to execute it. So we haven't built the plugin yet. We'll do that in a moment. But what we're going to do is we're going to build it, and it's just going to give us a go wait executable in our directory here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to bind that to the user local bin directory within Docker. And then we're going to add 3 environment variables. The first one is just Kong plugin. So this is just telling it, hey, activate or enable the go wait plugin. Then we need to add a plugin server name. This is considered a plugin server that we're doing. So we're just saying, hey, this is a plugin server named go wait. So again, the same name. And then the final thing we're doing is the plugin server go wait. So that matches the name query command. So basically it's telling it, this is how you execute the query command here. That's all we need to do here. So the final thing, we're going to open up the terminal again, and we basically just need to build our executable now. Of course, I'm on Mac, so we need to build this for Linux or for whatever distribution that you're using. In this case, my Docker image is running on Linux. So what I can do is you can run basically a go build, and you can specify the details of the kind of the underlying system that you're building it for. So I'm just going to do Linux, and I'm going to hit go build, and that should work fine. So now on the left hand side here, yeah, you can see the new file, go wait. And I think that's pretty much everything ready to go. So yeah, let's spin this up and give it a go. So I'm just gonna hit the play button here. And this is just gonna run my Docker Compose file. So that should hopefully get everything started. You can see that's been successfully deployed. I'm just gonna open this up and make sure that everything's fine in the logs. Yeah, that seems all right. We can see here within the logs here that we can see, yeah, starting go wait. So we can see that it's basically started a plugin and everything should be working fine. So I'm going to open up this Kong request HTTP file. So this is just basically how I'm going to make my HTTP call. You can use whatever client you want, Postman or anything. I'll leave this one within the repo in the description below if you want to use it. So I'm going to hit play. Yeah, I'm just going to run that. And the first time you can see that everything's worked fine. We can see our custom header here, X wait time 5 seconds, and we can see that it's returned the response. So everything's working fine now. So what we're going to do is we're just going to click it a couple of times. So again, 200, but if I click it before 5 seconds, you can see that we've got 400 bad requests, which is exactly what we specified. We can see that, yeah, we got the body of maximum requests reached. And again, if I click it again after 5 seconds, you're going to see that it's going to basically stop you every 5 seconds. And as you go on, eventually you'll get a successful response. Great, so hopefully that's kind of given you a kind of good overview of how to go about making plugins. Now, obviously I've done this all kind of in memory, assuming there's a single node, this might work okay, but the idea here is that, you know, this is a microservice in a sense, or a service in its own right, so you can do basically whatever you want. You can connect it to databases, APIs, and you can kind of just basically build it as if it's its own service and just kind of plug it in. So hopefully that makes a bit of sense, and yeah, thank you very much for watching. Have a good day, and I'll see you in the next one.